I can still feel the frostbite of the air on my skin, the way the November wind whipped up the dry leaves of the oak trees behind the manor, mimicking the frantic pulse in my ears. I remember the smell too, pine and rain-soaked earth, a clean scent that was brutally at odds with the muddy, sickening turmoil inside me. I was standing in a pair of worn-out jeans and a borrowed too-big jacket, trying to breathe, trying to not fall apart in front of the one person I was biologically, fundamentally meant for. I know that feeling of being told you're not enough, of having the one person you trust turn their back on you. Maya's pain is raw, and now her fear is real. She's been thrown into a nightmare she never saw coming. She's running on pure, terrified instinct right now, but her story is just beginning. If you're invested in Maya's desperate fight for survival, and you have to know how she deals with that terrifying shifter who just claimed her, then you need to hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single step of her journey from liability to ruthless survivor. This is where her fire truly starts to burn. Tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what emotion did Maya's abandonment stir up in you? Were you angry? Sad? His name was Elias. He was the alpha of the Blackwood Pack, the largest and most feared shifter territory in the state of Virginia. And I, Maya, was his mate. Or at least I was supposed to be. The moment he stepped out onto the wide, covered porch, the air itself seemed to crackle. He wasn't just a man, he was a force. Even in his human form, he stood taller than any man I'd ever met. His shoulders broad under a perfectly tailored dark coat. His hair was the color of midnight, and his eyes, when they focused on me, were the piercing, unyielding amber of a predator who knows he's king. They weren't just beautiful, they were terrifying. They held the ancient, untamed spirit of the wolf. My own heart, a pitiful, purely human organ, gave a painful, desperate thump. It had been nearly a year since the mating bond had snapped into place, a sudden, warm, golden feeling in my chest that had felt like coming home. I'd been working as a landscaper near their territory, completely unaware of the supernatural world until the day I tripped over a root and he was suddenly there, catching me with the rough, overwhelming scent of cedar and snow. For a week, it had been a dizzying, silent courtship. He hadn't spoken much, but the way he looked at me, the way his fingers would brush my arm, the promise in his intense eyes, it had felt like the entire universe had shifted just for us. Then came the realization. I wasn't like them. I didn't shift. I didn't have the strength, the speed, the healing, the raw power that pulsed in every single member of his pack. I was too human. Today was the day he was going to tell me what that meant for us. The Alpha's house wasn't just a home. It was a fortress, a symbol of their dominance. I felt microscopic on the sprawling stone patio. Elias walked slowly down the 3 stone steps until he was a mere foot away. His presence so heavy it felt like a physical weight on my chest. I could smell the faint, intoxicating musk of his wolf power and earth. I wanted to reach out, to touch the harsh line of his jaw, to beg him to hold me one last time, but my limbs were locked by a growing, bone-deep dread. "Maya," he finally said. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble, the sound of a mountain shifting. It was the most beautiful sound in the world, and now the most awful. It has been too long to leave this unspoken. My throat was dry, a desert. I could only manage a shaky whisper. "I know. I understand, Elias. I know what I am. And what I am not." He sighed, a barely perceptible release of air, but the tension in his massive shoulders didn't lessen. He didn't look angry. He looked burdened. That hurt more than anger ever could. "The bond is real. It is a profound, undeniable truth of nature," he stated, his voice flat. "My wolf recognizes you. My spirit recognizes you. That is why I haven't ended this before now. A fragile sliver of hope, sharp and dangerous, pierced the dark clouds in my chest. He still feels it. He still wants me. He shattered that hope with his next clinical words. But I am the alpha, Maya. Pack comes first. Always. My mate must be a woman who can stand by my side, not just in peace, but in conflict. She must be able to defend the territory, protect her alpha, and lead her people in a fight. You have no wolf. You have no defense. You are a liability. The word liability was a physical blow, a shard of ice shoved directly into the core of my being. My eyes burned, but I squeezed them shut, refusing to let the tears fall yet. I had to be strong for the final cut. I could try, I whispered, the plea tearing itself from my heart. I could learn, could train. I'm not weak, Elias. I'm smart. I'm your mate. He reached out, and for a terrifying, wonderful second, I thought he was going to cup my face to reassure me. Instead, his large, warm hand grasped my shoulder, his grip almost painful in its intensity. He looked directly into my eyes, and the amber gaze was cold, resolute, devoid of the softening affection I desperately searched for. And that is the great tragedy, Maya, he said, the words a death sentence. The bond is a mistake, a rare, cruel twist of fate that has given me a mate who cannot be a Luna. I cannot risk the pack's safety, my people's lives, for the sake of a faulty biological draw. I cannot be with a woman I must constantly shelter. A Luna must be a fortress, not a feather. He let go of my shoulder, the sudden absence of his touch like a phantom limb being removed. He took a single step back, widening the canyon between us. I am officially rejecting the bond. The 3 words, so simple, so final, didn't feel like words. They felt like a physical tearing, a violent ripping of that golden thread from my chest. I gasped, a wrenching, ugly sound, and the world seemed to tilt. The scents, the sounds, the brilliant amber of his eyes. It all swam, blurred by the sudden rushing wave of blinding pain. The emotional backlash of a supernatural rejection is 1,000 times worse than any human breakup. It's not just a relationship ending. It's a soul being sliced in half. It's the feeling of your fundamental reality being stripped away. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my chest where the bond had once glowed warmly. Now it was a searing, empty void. No! I choked out a pitiful, broken sound. Tears finally spilled over, hot tracks down my cold cheeks. Elias, please. We can fight this. I love you. He remained a statue, unmoving, his expression a mask of hardened control. The bond is broken, Maya. You must leave this territory immediately and never return. I will have a large sum of money transferred to your account, for your safety and your silence. Do not contact me or anyone in the pack. Live your life. Live your life. He was telling me to survive a spiritual amputation. You can't, I whispered, shaking my head violently. The pack. They'll know you rejected me. They'll sense it. They'll know you chose duty over the goddess's will. He gave a sharp, humorless laugh. The pack will be told the truth, that the mate I found was too soft, too weak, too human to carry the burden of the Alpha's queen. They will understand. They want a strong Luna, not a fragile human doll. Fragile human doll. That was the final, unforgivable insult. It wasn't just a rejection. It was a character assassination, a public shaming that would follow me into the human world he was banishing me to. I looked at him, not with love, but with a pure, white-hot, desperate agony that was rapidly curdling into true hatred. You're making a mistake, Elias, I managed, my voice suddenly steely despite the tears. The bond. It will leave a hole in you too. You won't find another. I will find an adequate Luna, he corrected, his voice flat. Now go before my patience runs out and my wolf takes over. I will not be gentle a second time. I didn't need to be told twice. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run. I spun around, blinded by tears and rage, and stumbled off the porch, across the manicured lawn, and toward my beat-up car parked by the gate. I drove off the Blackwood territory, away from the man who had promised me forever and then cast me aside for being born wrong. The next few months were a blur of deep, crippling depression. I relocated to a small, nondescript town in northern Pennsylvania, an area known for its remote forests and lack of supernatural activity. The money Elias sent sat untouched in a separate account. I couldn't bear to spend his rejection currency. I found a tiny apartment above a bookstore and got a job at a coffee shop. I cut my long hair, dyed it a different color, and tried to become a ghost, just Maya. No mate, no pack, no magic. Just human. The hole in my chest never closed. It just scarred over, a raw, sensitive place that ached whenever I saw a happy couple or heard a wolf howl on a nature documentary. I was working a late shift one Tuesday evening. It was snowing, a heavy, quiet fall that muted the sounds of the town. The coffee shop, the daily grind, was empty save for me and the owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, who was cleaning up the back. I was wiping down the counter, the clatter of the wet rag against the metal a monotonous rhythm, when the bell over the door chimed. I looked up, expecting a weary driver needing coffee, but the sight that met my eyes froze the blood in my veins. He was massive. Not just tall like Elias, but broad, built like a granite slab. His clothing, a thick, dark wool jacket and faded, ripped jeans, looked like they'd been scavenged. But it wasn't his size that stopped me. It was the raw, untamed energy radiating off him. He smelled of deep woods, blood, and something feral, something utterly terrifyingly wild. His hair was long, black, and matted with what looked like dried leaves and dirt. His face was sharp, angular, and covered in a week's worth of dark stubble, but it was his eyes that sent a spike of pure, primal fear through me. They weren't the polished amber of an alpha like Elias. They were a dull, dangerous gold, the color of a predator's reflection in a dark pool. They were ancient, unblinking, and utterly devoid of humanity. This wasn't a civilized shifter. This was something else. This was a feral. He didn't walk, he prowled. Every movement was slow, deliberate, and powerful, like a tightly coiled spring. He stopped right in front of the counter, his massive hands resting on the granite, his gold eyes locking onto mine with an unnerving, predatory intensity. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only stare into the eyes of a beast who had decided I was his next meal. Coffee. I finally squeaked out, a pathetic offering. He didn't acknowledge the question. He only leaned closer, slowly, deliberately. His scent, musky, dark, and terrifying, filled my nostrils. He didn't smell like a pack animal. He smelled like a hunter who lived outside the rules, outside the law. His mouth, a thin, cruel line, curved into a slow, unsettling smirk. "I didn't come for coffee," he rumbled. His voice a deep, rough vibration that felt like it resonated in my bones. It was a voice that hadn't been used for polite conversation in a very long time. He lifted one hand, his fingers thick and scarred, and reached across the counter. I flinched, expecting him to grab me, to hurt me. Instead, he just traced a single light line from my chin down to the hollow of my throat. I couldn't even manage a whimper. I was completely paralyzed. His eyes never left mine, and a flicker of something ancient and knowing, a cold, terrifying recognition, finally shone in their depths. "I came for the woman who smells like rejection," he whispered. his breath hot against my skin, sending a violent shudder down my spine. Then, his eyes dropped to the scar of my broken bond, the one only shifters could truly sense, the emptiness Elias had created, and his unsettling grin widened, revealing a brief flash of dangerously long canines. "The one who was abandoned by a weak king," he continued, his tone mocking. He squeezed my throat, not hard enough to choke me, but hard enough to send a clear, terrifying message. "You were too human for him, little mortal. But you are perfect for me. Every wound he inflicted will be a weakness for my pack to exploit." He paused, leaning in until I could feel the heat radiating off his body, the terrifying primal hunger in his gaze. "You are coming with me, Maya," he commanded, his voice hardening into an iron fist. "He didn't ask," he claimed. "The Blackwood pack needs a queen. A different kind of queen. And every queen needs a king strong enough to take her." He pulled back, a flicker of pure, gold-eyed malice in his stare. "I am Caleb, and you will be my queen." He didn't wait for a reply. He reached over the counter, his strength monstrous, and grabbed my arm, yanking me over the granite counter like I weighed nothing more than a child's rag doll. The moment my feet left the ground, a scream tore free, but it was muffled by the sudden brutal impact of my head against the counter edge. Everything went black, but the last thing I felt was the raw, calloused hand of the feral shifter, Caleb dragging my limp, rejected body out into the blinding silent snow. Elias had cast me out. Caleb had come to claim me. And the terrifying, emotional story of my survival, and what I would become, had just begun. I woke up to the smell of damp earth and stale blood. The pain was a distant, throbbing drum behind my eyes, a souvenir from my meeting with the counter. My hands were bound tightly in front of me with thick, rough cord that chafed my wrists, and a heavy, musty sack had been thrown over my head. I was moving, jostled roughly against something hard and wooden. Truck bed. A cold, sinking dread settled in my stomach. I was no longer in Pennsylvania. I was completely at the mercy of a creature whose scent alone was a warning sign. Caleb, the feral shifter. "She's awake." The voice was low, guttural, and right next to me. I tried to flinch away, but the movement only caused my head to spin. I whimpered, a weak, pathetic sound I hated. I had to get a grip. I was a human woman, not a prey animal, no matter how much my instincts screamed otherwise. "Let me go," I croaked, the words muffled by the sack. My voice was shaky, but the defiance felt like a necessary lifeline. A dark, humorless chuckle vibrated through the air near my ear. "No. You're mine now, little morsel. You're the prize. You're going to be very important to the cause." "The cause?" I spat out, instantly regretting the boldness when I felt a massive hand clamp down on my shoulder, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "Silence, Maya," Caleb commanded. The use of my name from his rough mouth felt like a violation. "And it is not a cause. It is retribution. It is the rightful return of power to those the soft pack shifters have forgotten how to fear." The truck hit a massive bump, and I cried out as my back slammed against the wood. The driver, presumably Caleb, didn't slow down. He was driving with the brutal indifference of someone who didn't care about a simple human's comfort, or survival for that matter. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even, steady, something that wouldn't betray the sheer terror turning my bones to jelly. He shifted next to me, and the musky, wild scent intensified, mixed with a metallic tang of old blood. "To my territory. A place the Blackwood pack abandoned long ago. Place where the rules are simpler, more honest. We are the feral pack. We do not bow to alphas like Elias who value tailored suits over strength. Hearing Elias's name jolted me. The pain of the rejection was still a fresh, weeping wound, but the mention of his weakness, of Caleb challenging the authority of the man who had cast me aside, stirred a strange, confusing emotion. It wasn't pity for Elias. It was a vicious, almost satisfying recognition that his arrogance was about to cost him. He called me a liability. Now, that liability was a trophy for his most dangerous rival. "If you want to hurt Elias, why take me?" I asked, genuinely baffled. "I'm nobody. I'm just a human who worked at a coffee shop. He rejected me. I'm worthless to him." Caleb laughed again, a harsh, rasping sound. "That is precisely why you are priceless. A queen does not have to be powerful. She has to be symbolic. You were chosen by Elias's wolf. You carry the scent of a true mate bond, even if that coward broke it. By claiming you, I am taking his greatest honor, his greatest failure, and shoving it back in his arrogant face." He paused, and I felt the weight of his attention even through the sack. "You are a declaration of war, Maya. You are the sign that the old ways are returning. You are the queen of the feral pack because you were the queen the Alpha refused. I take what he discards. I take his loss and make it my victory. Every second you are at my side, it will shame him." His words painted a horrific picture of my future. I wasn't just a captive. I was a living, breathing insult, a pawn in a brutal game of supernatural politics. My heart pounded against my ribs, frantic, desperate. "And what happens to me after you?" "You make your declaration," I asked, barely breathing. Caleb's tone softened slightly, but it was the chilling, deceptive softness of a lion playing with a field mouse. "You will be safe. Safer than you were under the protection of that soft alpha. Here you only need to fear me. And I have plans for you, Queen." He said the word queen with heavy sarcasm, but the underlying threat was unmistakable. The truck finally ground to a halt. The door on Caleb's side opened with a heavy squeak. I felt a gust of frigid air and heard the crunch of boots on frozen gravel. "Get up," he ordered. He wasn't gentle. He grabbed the rough cord binding my wrists and yanked me forward, pulling me out of the truck and onto my knees. The sack came off my head, and I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the blinding brightness of a cloudy afternoon. We were in a clearing deep in a massive, ancient forest. The trees were bare, their skeletal branches reaching up like claws against the gray sky. The air was thick with the smell of pine, decay, and smoke. In the center of the clearing stood a sprawling, dilapidated log structure, barely qualifying as a lodge. It was clearly abandoned, the windows dark, the wood warped. This was the feral territory. Around the clearing, scattered like shadows among the trees, were at least a dozen other shifters. They were all male and they were all terrifying. They were dressed in rough hides and dark, practical clothing, their faces grim and wary. Their eyes, a startling array of golds and yellows, were fixed on me with intense, unnerving curiosity. They looked less like a pack and more like a tribal warband. Caleb hauled me to my feet, his massive hand gripping the nape of my neck like I was a puppy. "Look at her!" Caleb roared, his voice suddenly amplified, carrying across the clearing. The sound was half human shout, half wolf snarl, raw and powerful. He shoved me forward, making me stumble. I stood there, shivering, my face probably pale and marked with terror, a pathetic contrast to his primal strength. "This is the Blackwood Alpha's mate," he proclaimed, gesturing toward me with a mocking sweep of his arm. "The woman his own wolf chose. The woman the goddess herself willed to be his Luna." A chorus of growls and murmurs rose from the shadowy figures. "And this," Caleb continued, his voice dripping with contempt, is what the great Alpha Elias did with his gift. He rejected her. He called her too human, too fragile. He traded the goddess's decree for a comfortable political alliance. He shames us all. The shifters around us began to shift their weight, their faces contorting in expressions of disgust and rising anger. Caleb was a master manipulator, using my rejection, the wound I was still bleeding from, as a rallying cry. He was painting Elias as a soft, spineless leader who had betrayed the ancient laws for human convenience. A man stepped out from the group, his face a landscape of scars and his eyes a startling pale gold. His build was almost as imposing as Caleb's. "She is weak, Caleb," the scarred man grunted, skepticism thick in his tone. "A human is only a burden. Why do we need his trash?" Caleb grinned, a frightening wolfish flash of teeth. "She is the weakness that will tear Blackwood apart from the inside, Jackson. She is our symbol. He cannot kill her without looking like a monster. He cannot ignore her without looking like a coward." He grabbed me by the shoulders and spun me around so I faced the shadowy figures. "Look closely. She is the one he cast out. Her scent is a beacon of his abandonment. And she is going to be my Luna." The last word was a declaration, a challenge thrown not just at the Blackwood pack but at the very system that had elevated Elias. "Bring her," Jackson conceded, his voice heavy with doubt. "But if she slows us down, she dies." "She won't slow us down," Caleb promised, pulling me tight against his side. The warmth of his body was overwhelming, suffocating. "She will run. Because she has nowhere else to go. Because she has seen the price of weakness." He dragged me toward the dilapidated lodge. The heavy wooden door groaned open, revealing an interior that was dimly lit by a roaring fire in a massive stone hearth. The air inside was smoky, stale, and smelled intensely of unwashed bodies and wood smoke. He stopped me abruptly in the center of the room, near the crackling fire. It was the main room, clearly serving as a makeshift meeting area and living space. "Now," Caleb said, his voice dropping back to a low, dangerous rumble. He shoved me down onto a worn-out, threadbare rug near the fire, forcing me to sit. "I need you to understand your position, Luna." I huddled on the floor, my eyes darting around the room, which was filled with crude weapons, axes, knives, and even a few old rifles and sleeping pallets. I felt utterly exposed, utterly alone. "I don't belong here," I whispered, the firelight making the tears in my eyes sparkle momentarily. "I'm not a Luna. I'm just a human. Please just let me go." Caleb knelt in front of me, bringing his fierce, gold-eyed gaze level with mine. The proximity was terrifying. I could see the tiny scars crisscrossing his face, the intensity of his wolf spirit blazing in his pupils. "You don't get to choose where you belong, little bird. Not anymore. Elias took that choice from you when he broke the bond," he stated, his voice laced with cruel logic. "He declared you unworthy. I will prove him wrong. I will make you worthy, by making you indispensable to my plans." He reached out and gently, too gently, pushed a strand of hair back from my face. My skin crawled at his touch. "You will stay by my side. You will be seen. You will be a constant, visible reminder to Elias of his colossal mistake. And while you are my queen, you will be protected. My shifters," he gestured around the room, where a few men were already settling down, watching us, "will kill anyone who dares to touch you without my command." His eyes darkened, and the raw hunger I'd seen in the coffee shop returned, chilling me to the core. "Understand this, Maya. You are mine to protect, and you are mine to use. There is no middle ground. You may be weak now, but you are a survivor. I know the scent of a cornered animal that will fight to live. And you, my rejected queen, will fight for me." He released my hands, the rough cord falling away. I rubbed my raw wrists, wincing. The freedom felt less like liberation and more like a cruel joke. "Why should I fight for you?" I challenged, managing to look him in the eye, the desperation lending me a sudden, fleeting bravery. "You kidnapped me. You're a monster. You're no better than Elias. He chained me with duty. You're chaining me with fear." Caleb actually smiled this time, a slow, terrifyingly genuine expression that did nothing to soften the menace in his eyes. "That is where you are wrong, little queen," he said, rising slowly to his feet, towering over me. "Elias offered you comfort and demanded perfection in return. He offered you a gilded cage and rejected you when your wings weren't strong enough to fly. I am offering you only the dirt, the cold, and the chance to survive. But I will never ask you to be anything more than you already are. A resourceful, terrified human. And unlike Elias, I will never send you away." He turned and walked toward a corner of the room, speaking over his shoulder to one of his men. "Jackson, get her some blankets and clean water. She is to be treated with respect. She is the Alpha's queen." The shifters watched me as if I were a volatile bomb they were waiting to detonate. I sat by the fire, the heat doing little to combat the cold dread that had seeped into my soul. I was a human in a den of wolves. I was a declaration of war, a symbol of rejection, and the ultimate pawn. Elias had called me a liability. Caleb had called me a queen. The difference was negligible. I was still trapped, but this time the stakes were life and death, and my survival depended on the whims of a feral alpha who saw my trauma as his greatest asset. I looked at the scars on my wrists from the ropes. They were minor, simple cuts. The scar from Elias's rejection, the one Caleb had instantly sensed, was invisible, and it was still bleeding. But staring at the flames, a tiny ember of anger began to glow in the vast emptiness where the bond had been. Elias wanted me weak and silent. Caleb wanted me visible and scared. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to be neither. A shifter named Jackson dropped a coarse wool blanket next to me, along with a tin cup of water. He stared down, his pale gold eyes unreadable. "Don't cause trouble, human," he warned, his voice low and serious. "Caleb needs you alive. We need you compliant. Give us any reason to doubt your loyalty to the cause, and Caleb's protection will be revoked. And out here, there is no place for a human without a wolf to guard her." He left me there, the finality of his threat hanging in the smoky air. I took a deep, shaky breath, the scent of pine and raw power filling my lungs. I was in hell. A hell forged by the man who had cast me out, and now ruled by the monster who had claimed me. My only path forward was to play the role of the terrified, weak queen until I could find a moment, a weakness, an opportunity, to fight back, not for Elias and certainly not for Caleb, but for myself. The long night was just beginning. The moon was rising somewhere outside the grimy windows, and I was sure I could hear a distant howl. Sounded different tonight. It didn't sound like a pack call. It sounded like a hunter's triumph. The days bled into weeks in the feral pack's territory, a stretch of brutal, isolated wilderness deep in the Appalachians. Every moment was a tight, agonizing wire walk. I was surrounded by men who were wolves in the truest, most dangerous sense, unpredictable, territorial, and driven by raw instinct. Yet I survived. Had to. The alternative was a terrifying finality I wasn't ready to face. My life became a bizarre performance. By day, I was Maya, the frightened human captive. By night, I was the queen, Caleb's symbolic Luna. I stayed within the cramped confines of the lodge's main room, near the constant smoky heat of the stone hearth. I slept on the coarse wool blankets Jackson had provided, always with one eye half open, always listening to the rough breathing and shifting bodies of the shifters around me. I tried to be invisible, blending into the shadows, but as Caleb's chosen symbol, invisibility was impossible. Every feral shifter in that room watched me, with contempt, suspicion, and a chilling, predatory curiosity. Caleb himself was a complex, frightening puzzle. He was cruel, yes, but his cruelty was directed more at the idea of Elias than at me, the person. He never laid a hand on me in violence, but his possessiveness was absolute. When he spoke to me, it was often to issue a command or to deliver a chilling explanation of his plans. "You have to eat, Queen," he'd barked one evening, tossing a chunk of dried, tough meat onto my blanket. "A symbol that starves is a weak symbol." I tried to refuse, my stomach churning at the taste and texture of the game, but I knew he was right. I needed strength. Elias had called me weak. Caleb was forcing me to survive. The irony was a bitter pill. The shifters around me were slowly becoming less like faceless monsters and more like men with names. There was Jackson, the scarred second in command, whose distrust of me was absolute. He saw me as a vulnerability, a ticking time bomb of humanity that would betray their feral strength. Then there was Silas, a younger, quieter man with unsettlingly vacant eyes, who mostly kept to the shadows but had a strange habit of watching me as if waiting for me to break. But the most frequent interaction was with Caleb. He often spent hours cleaning and sharpening crude knives or studying faded maps near the fire, and he'd use that time to talk at me. His monologues were terrifying lessons in the feral pack's ideology. Elias and his kind, Caleb had growled one afternoon, running a whetstone over a large blade, the metallic shing sound scraping against my nerves. "They forget what we are. They wear human clothes, they talk of diplomacy, they chase human status. They are afraid of their own wolves. They are soft." I'd hugged my knees to my chest, my voice barely a rustle. "What's wrong with wanting to live in peace?" He stopped sharpening the knife abruptly, the silence deafening. He looked at me, and his gold eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "Peace is a delusion crafted by the strong to keep the weak in line. We are wolves, Maya. We are not meant to file tax returns and worry about property lines. We are meant to run, to hunt, to take what is ours. Elias seeks acceptance from the human world. I seek dominance over the weak world he is trying to protect." His philosophy was brutal, yet frighteningly simple. It stripped away all the polite veneer of the Blackwood pack and exposed a core of raw, ancient aggression. It was a world where my humanity made me not just weak, but prey. My primary task, my strange survival strategy, was to observe. I watched the way the shifters moved, the small rituals of their rough lives, and the intricate dynamics between them and Caleb. I learned that Caleb ruled by pure, uncontested might, but he also provided for them, giving them the freedom to live as true wolves, unburdened by Elias's strict pack laws. This loyalty, based on respect for his power and freedom, was fierce. One particularly cold morning, Caleb returned to the lodge covered in frost and the fresh scent of pine. He strode in, his face set in a look of grim determination, and immediately began assembling a small, battered communications device, an old satellite phone he kept hidden. He didn't notice me watching from my corner, curled up and trying to conserve heat. He punched in a series of numbers, his lips moving silently. Then he spoke, his voice low and intense. "It is done. The lumber shipment is gone. I want Elias to know. I want him to know it was me. No more games." He listened for a moment, his jaw clenched. Then he slammed the phone down onto the rough wooden table. He knows. He knows I have struck. And soon he will know I have his queen. I felt a cold rush of understanding. Caleb wasn't just planning to hold me captive. He was systematically targeting Elias's economic assets and infrastructure, chipping away at the foundation of the Blackwood Alpha's power. My capture was the final, devastating piece of his strategy, a direct challenge to Elias's status as a leader. As he turned away from the phone, he caught my gaze. His eyes fixed on mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond predatory intent, a strange, possessive concern. He didn't want me to look scared. He wanted me to look strong so his trophy would shine brighter. "Do you know how to shoot a gun, Maya?" he asked, abruptly changing the subject. I blinked, taken aback. I went target practice once. With a friend. A long time ago. He nodded approvingly. "Good. You understand the tool. Come." He beckoned me toward the door, not waiting for a reply. Terror warred with a desperate curiosity. He was never casual. Everything was a lesson, a power play, or a test. Outside, the air was sharp and icy. The ground was frosted. Caleb led me to a small clearing behind the lodge, where a collection of battered targets, old barrels and logs, had been set up. He pulled a heavy, worn rifle from a stash hidden beneath a tarp. "Hold this," he commanded, placing the cold, heavy weight into my hands. My fingers, stiff from the cold and lack of use, fumbled with the metal. The rifle was heavy, awkward, and felt like a foreign object. "You are a human, Maya," he said, standing close behind me. His scent and heat overwhelming. "You have no claws, no speed, no internal fire to heal yourself. Your strength lies only in your resourcefulness. Your best defense is distance, speed, and these." He tapped the rifle barrel with a single thick finger. "The tools of the mortal world." He positioned me, guiding my shoulders, making sure my stance was wide and stable. His hands were rough and scarred, yet his instruction was precise. "Elias would have forced you to train your muscles, to become a shadow of a shifter you could never be," Caleb murmured near my ear, his breath warm against the cold skin of my neck. "I don't care about your muscles. I care about your focus." He leaned closer, forcing me to feel the full, raw presence of the wolf barely contained beneath his skin. "You must learn to defend yourself, not because I care about your survival as a person, but because my queen will not die easily. Elias's weakness was wanting a strong mate. My strength is using a weak one. And if he comes for you, you will fire this." He loaded the weapon with unnerving ease, the metallic click echoing in the quiet woods. "Hold steady. Aim for the center of that barrel. Breathe." I aimed down the sight, my hands shaking violently. My eye blurred, and the barrel swam. I was terrified of the noise, the recoil, the raw power held in my human hands. "I can't," I choked out, lowering the rifle slightly. "I'll miss. I'll mess up." Caleb didn't yell. Instead, he reached around me, his large hand enveloping mine on the stock, his body a solid wall of power pressing against my back. "You are afraid of the bullet, but you should be more afraid of what happens if you don't use it," he whispered, his voice intense and low, a hypnotic pulse of menace. "Fear is not weakness, Maya. Fear is focus. It is the fire that keeps you alive. It is the fuel of survival. Embrace the terror. Let it sharpen your sight." He pressed the rifle firmly back against my shoulder. "Now, breathe out. Fire." I didn't think. I just pulled the trigger. The explosion of sound was deafening, the recoil slamming back into my shoulder with a painful jolt. I cried out, dropping the rifle, my ears ringing. My eyes were watering, but through the haze I saw the middle barrel, a large rusted drum, had a clean new hole directly through its center. I hit it. Caleb's low chuckle was a sound of dark triumph. He picked up the rifle, his eyes blazing with feral satisfaction. You see, little queen, even a human can be deadly when she is desperate. Elias rejected a mate who could have learned this. He rejected a woman who has the raw, fearful instinct to survive. He chose pride over ruthlessness. That is the true weakness. Not your humanity, but his pack's softness. He was using my fear, my pain, my rejection as tools to break down my resistance. But in that moment, as the smoke drifted from the barrel and the pain settled in my shoulder, something shifted inside me. The adrenaline rush wasn't just fear. It was power. It was the sudden, shocking realization that I, Maya, the fragile human doll, held the power of life and death in my hands. Caleb looked at me, his face grim, and pointed to the hole in the barrel. This is your new reality, Maya. Forget the coffee shop. Forget Elias's comfortable prison. Here you are alive. And you will learn to stay that way. He tossed the rifle back into the stash and walked away, leaving me trembling in the cold, the metallic scent of gunpowder heavy in the air. He hadn't just taught me to shoot. He had shown me a glimpse of the weapon I could become, a weapon forged by my own desperation and Elias's fatal mistake. I looked at my hands, no longer just the hands of a coffee shop worker, but the hands that had just fired a shot that could kill. A chilling sense of self-reliance, born of terror, began to replace the despair. Elias's rejection was the scar. Caleb was pouring salt into the wound and telling me to fight the pain. I knew with bone-deep certainty that if Elias ever came for me, and if Caleb ordered me to fire, I would do it. Not for Caleb's victory, but for my own life. I would survive. And Elias would have to face the woman he created, a human whose desperation made her capable of things his civilized wolf could never comprehend. This chapter is 1,820 words. It focuses on the psychological tension, establishing the feral pack's ideology, detailing Caleb's manipulative yet instructive nature, and creating a pivotal moment where Maya finds a brutal new form of strength, a strength born of fear and self-defense, directly challenging Elias's initial judgment of her. The weeks of intense, stressful observation and forced training with Caleb had sharpened my senses and hardened my spirit in ways I never thought possible. The lodge, once a cage, had become a desolate, dangerous school. I was still terrified, but the terror was no longer paralyzing. It was fuel, exactly as Caleb had predicted. My body was bruised, my clothes were stained, and my humanity was eroding, replaced by the grim resilience of a creature fighting for survival in the wilderness. I had learned the schedules of the feral pack's patrols, the shifts of the guards, the meaning behind different howls in the night, and most importantly, how to remain utterly silent and still when a sudden noise drew attention. I had even learned to stomach the tough, unseasoned meat they ate, knowing every bite was a deposit into my survival fund. But the most exhausting battle was internal. My bond with Elias was broken, yes, but the supernatural connection wasn't merely severed. It was shredded. There were days when a sharp, phantom pain would pierce my chest, a deep ache that felt like an emotional cavity. I knew instinctively, horrifyingly, that these moments coincided with intense distress or strong emotion from Elias. I was his scar, and sometimes a scar can still sting. One bitterly cold afternoon, I was huddled by the fire, mending a tear in my jeans, a skill I'd quickly picked up in this rough environment, when the pain struck. It wasn't the usual ache. It was a devastating, crushing wave of fear and raw fury, so strong it made me gasp. The needle clattered to the wooden floor. I curled into myself, clutching my chest, struggling to breathe. It felt like someone had driven a knife into my ribs and twisted. It was Elias's emotion. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of a powerful alpha's rage and panic. Something terrible was happening to the Blackwood pack, and he was at the center of it. Caleb, who had been cleaning his rifle a few feet away, instantly sensed my distress. He dropped the weapon onto the table with a loud thud, his gold eyes snapping to me, alight with ferocious intensity. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. I was shaking, unable to form words. Him," I whispered, the name catching in my throat. "Elias. Something is wrong. The bond. I can feel it." Caleb prowled over to me, kneeling quickly, the movement fluid and predatory. He grasped my chin, forcing me to look up into his terrifying, calculating gaze. His wolf scent, dark earth and raw musk, filled my lungs, momentarily overriding the shock of Elias's terror. "Explain," he ordered, his grip firm. "I broke the bond. I know I did. You should feel nothing but the residue of the past. It's not love. It's not us," I managed, fighting for control. "It's the tearing. The scar. When he is under duress, the pain comes back. Now it's anger. In fear. He is truly, truly terrified." A slow, chilling grin spread across Caleb's rough face. It was the most satisfying expression of malicious triumph I had ever witnessed. "Fear," he scoffed, releasing my chin. He stood, towering over me, radiating dark energy. "The great Alpha Elias feels fear. But that means the last raid was a success." He walked back to his rifle, now humming a low, wordless tune of dark satisfaction. I took his primary patrol route surveillance system. I took his communication lines. He is blind, Maya. He is isolated. And soon, he will be desperate enough to come out of his comfortable fortress and look for the truth. "He will come for you," I said, my voice steadier now, laced with a warning. "He is an alpha, Caleb. You've hurt his pride, his pack, and his territory. He will be merciless." Caleb let out a short, sharp laugh. "That is the point, little queen. I want him to come for me. I want him to face the reality that his rejection of you was his downfall. When he sees you, alive and standing with my pack, it will shatter his control. He will be forced to fight me in his frenzy, and a frantic alpha is a weak one." He looked at me with an unnerving possessiveness. "And when he sees the pain in your eyes, the pain he put there, and realizes that I am the only thing standing between you and the inevitable, he will crumble. You are the ultimate psychological weapon, Maya. The queen of scars." The next day, Caleb and Jackson left on what he called a reconnaissance trip, leaving Silas and a few other hardened shifters to guard the lodge. I seized the opportunity. Caleb's absence, though brief, felt like a breath of slightly cleaner air. I approached Silas, the quiet, watchful shifter whose eyes always seemed to be somewhere far away. He was sitting on a log outside, staring into the dense woods. "Silas," I began, my voice quiet but firm. I knew better than to approach shifters like them with fear. I had to approach them with the same brutal honesty they lived by. He didn't move, didn't turn his head. "The Alpha's queen shouldn't be speaking to me," he mumbled, his voice a low, flat monotone. "You don't trust me," I stated simply, stepping closer. "None of you do. You think I am a liability. You think I will run back to the Blackwood pack the first chance I get." He finally turned his head, his vacant eyes looking me over with a weary assessment. "You are human. You are weak. You are a pet, not a queen. Why would we trust the weakness the Alpha brings among us? The contempt was a familiar, dull ache. But I pressed on, my voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. Elias rejected me because I was human. He threw me away, not caring if I lived or died. Do you truly think I have any loyalty left for that man? He gave me a scar that your Alpha senses every day. He made me this. I have nothing left in the world but the chance to survive. Silas stared at me for a long moment, a ghost of emotion, perhaps recognition, perhaps pity, flitting across his pale face. Caleb says you are his trophy, Silas said, his gaze returning to the trees. He uses you to hurt Elias's pride. But he will never truly accept a human. When the fight is done, you will still be a liability. You will still be rejected. Maybe, I conceded, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was a massive risk, but I needed an ally, or at least a neutral party. But if Elias wins, I die. If Caleb wins, I might live. Understand that. I am not trying to run to Elias. I am trying to survive Caleb's inevitable victory. I need to know the layout of this territory, Silas. I need to know the escape routes. Not to leave, but to know where to hide when the Blackwood pack attacks. He shifted on the log, pulling his jacket tighter around him. We are feral. We don't have escape routes. We fight to the death. Then you fight stupidly, I said, a dangerous flicker of frustration overriding my fear. Caleb calls Elias soft for wearing a suit. But you are all soft in the head if you think an army of Blackwood warriors won't overwhelm you when they come. You need a contingency, Silas. And I'm the only one here with enough human sense to see it. I leaned in, my voice laced with desperate sincerity. I don't care about your war. I only care about staying alive. Tell me where the old hunting paths are. Tell me the safest way into the higher ridges. I won't run. But if I am forced to hide, I will be a burden to no one. And if Elias captures me, he will get nothing from me but contempt for the man who cast me aside. I held his gaze, letting the raw, visible scar of Elias's rejection speak for me. After a terrifying stretch of silence, Silas finally sighed, a deep, weary exhalation. There is a path behind the western ridge, he murmured, barely audible over the wind. It's an old deer trail. Runs straight up the mountain. No shifter uses it. Too steep for wolves in a hurry. He paused, then added a cryptic warning. It leads to the old cabin. Abandoned. If you use it, be silent. And leave me out of it, human. I didn't press for more. A single piece of information, willingly given, was a victory. I simply nodded, stepped back into the shadows of the lodge, and allowed a small, cold kernel of hope to take root in the desolate soil of my heart. Silas hadn't offered loyalty, but he had offered a path, a slim chance at surviving the coming storm. Caleb returned late that evening. He smelled different, not just pine and musk, but a sharp, clean scent of rain and adrenaline. He was energized, triumphant. He strode into the lodge, his gold eyes immediately seeking me out. "It is done, little queen," he announced, his voice booming. "Elias's patience is at an end. We received a transmission. He has ordered a full-scale search of all abandoned territories within a 100-mile radius. He is coming." The shifters around the fire began to stir, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. The moment of confrontation was finally upon them. Caleb walked over to me, kneeling once again, his expression intense. "Soon, Maya, you will look your former mate in the eye. You will see the shame and the fury on his face. You will stand by me, and you will be my proof, the proof that his pride has cost him everything." He reached out and gently touched the faint rope marks on my wrists. You will not run. You will not betray me. Not because you fear me, but because you fear the alternative. Remember the rifle, Maya. Remember the power of a desperate human. I stared into his savage, triumphant eyes, and I knew he was right. I wouldn't run, not yet. I needed to see Elias's face. I needed to see the regret and the realization of his error. The man who had called me a fragile human doll needed to see the strength his rejection had brutally forged. I won't run, I confirmed, my voice steady, though my stomach was a knot of ice. I want to see his face when he realizes what he gave up for duty. Caleb's smile was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Pure, predatory satisfaction. Good. Then prepare yourself, Luna. The war begins at dawn. And you, the rejected human, are the prize. I sat by the dying fire that night, the weight of Caleb's expectation and Elias's impending arrival a crushing burden. I had a path of escape, thanks to Silas, but I wouldn't take it yet. I had been discarded, humiliated, and used as a weapon. I needed one final, devastating moment, a confrontation with Elias that would heal the wound of his rejection with the cold fire of my own bitter truth. I was the queen of scars, and it was time for the Alpha who created them to pay the price. The air was the coldest I had ever known, thick with a damp chill that promised a brutal, unforgiving dawn. I stood just inside the doorway of the lodge, the heavy wooden door propped open, offering a sliver of cover. The scent of pine and frozen earth was now dominated by a heavy, aggressive musk, the collective rising scent of the feral pack, vibrating with anticipation. Caleb stood directly in front of me, his massive frame shielding me slightly from the pre-dawn gloom. He wasn't wearing his usual scavenged coat. He was stripped down to a rough, dark tunic, his muscles coiled and ready, radiating a savage confidence that was almost palpable. His gold eyes were fixed on the tree line, gleaming like lanterns in the fading dark. "Stay behind me, Queen," he rumbled, his voice low, a deep resonance in his chest. "You are the focus of his rage. But you are my possession. He will not reach you." I wasn't afraid of Elias hurting me physically. The pain I carried from his rejection was worse than any wound. No, I was afraid of seeing the man I had loved, the man my soul had chosen, and having my carefully constructed wall of cold fury crumble. But I had prepared for this. I clutched the heavy, smooth rock I had found by the hearth, a simple human weapon, my hands clammy with sweat despite the cold. If I had to fight, it would be close, messy, and desperate. A sudden, sharp sound cut through the forest quiet, the snap of a dry branch. It was followed by the low, controlled sound of dozens of footfalls. They weren't sneaking. They were marching. The Blackwood pack had arrived. The tree line parted, and the clearing filled with shifters. They were everything the feral pack was not: disciplined, organized, and dressed in matching dark gear, a professional army. They moved with the cold, controlled precision of men who followed rules, not instincts. And in the very front, his presence immediately dominating the scene, was Elias. The sight of him was like a punch to the gut. Even from this distance, I could feel the residual searing pain of the broken bond flare in my chest. He was magnificent, infuriatingly so. His midnight hair was wet with dew, his jaw set, and his amber eyes, my once home, were alight with a blinding, lethal fury. He looked more alpha than ever, radiating a polished power that made Caleb's wild strength seem crude by comparison. But beneath the fury I sensed it, the terror. Not a human's fear, but a pack alpha's primal, deep-seated dread that his authority was being challenged and his people were at risk. Elias stopped 20 feet from Caleb, his pack forming a deadly silent crescent behind him. His eyes swept over the feral shifters, lingering with contempt, before they landed on the lodge entrance. Caleb. And then, finally, on me. The impact of his gaze was a physical shockwave. For a moment the battle lines, the shifters, the whole world dissolved. There was only Elias, seeing the woman he discarded, now standing as a captive symbol for his most brutal enemy. His composure shattered. "Maya!" he growled, the name a raw, agonized sound that echoed across the clearing. It wasn't the flat, dismissive tone of the day he rejected me. It was the sound of a man who realized he had made a catastrophic error. Caleb let out a triumphant, mocking roar. "She is not your Maya, Elias. She is my queen, the Luna of the feral pack." Caleb shoved me forward, stepping slightly aside, forcing me into Elias's direct line of sight. I stood there, stiff and defiant, the cold wind whipping my hair across my face. I held his gaze, refusing to look away, letting him see the bruising on my arms, the terror I had conquered, the sheer, bitter truth of my existence. Elias's amber eyes widened, fixing on the faded rope burns on my wrists, the telltale signs of my rough captivity. The look on his face was one of absolute, devastating self-reproach. "You lay a finger on her, Caleb, and I will tear your spine out through your throat," Elias hissed, his voice dangerously low, stripped of all alpha authority and replaced by raw, primitive malice. "You had your chance to lay a finger on her, Elias," Caleb retorted, his face twisted in a look of savage glee. "You had your chance to claim her, protect her, and honor the goddess's bond. But you didn't. You called her a liability. You called her too human. You cast her out like garbage." He stepped closer to me, his hand settling heavily, possessively on my shoulder. The moment he touched me, Elias roared, a sound that was pure, unfiltered alpha, a demand for dominance and ownership. It was the sound I had once dreamed of hearing, but now it only filled me with cold contempt. Caleb merely laughed, a dark, rich sound of victory. The mighty alpha finally shows his wolf, but only when his prize is taken. "Look at her, Elias. She bears the scar of your weakness. I am here because you are soft. I am here because you fear the ancient ways. And I have your mate." Elias took a step forward, his fists clenched, his composure dangerously close to breaking. "She is human, Caleb. She is nothing to your cause. Let her go and we will talk." This was my moment. The moment I had stayed and endured the cold and the fear for. I had to speak. I had to weaponize my pain. I shifted slightly, pulling my shoulder out from under Caleb's grasp, but remaining firmly in the feral pack's territory. I looked past Caleb, past Jackson and Silas, and met Elias's burning gaze. "He's right, Elias," I said, my voice cutting through the tense silence. It was thin, rough from disuse, but steady. Every word was a razor blade. "I am human. I was weak. You discarded me for the good of your pack. You chose your politics and your duty over the bond." I took a shaky breath, letting the sting of the cold air clear my head. "You stood on your porch and called me a fragile doll. Now I stand in the dirt, surrounded by men who are monsters, and I am still alive. I am still breathing. I learned how to shoot the guns you fear. I learned how to track. I survived your rejection and I survived them." I pointed the rock in my hand, the pathetic human weapon, at Elias's chest. "You talk of duty, Elias, but you only see yourself. You saw the risk I presented, but you never saw the woman who would have fought to the death for you. You didn't reject me because I was weak. You rejected me because you were afraid of the strength a human mate could force you to develop." My voice broke slightly, but I forced the words out, pouring all my residual agony into the final, defining truth. I am the liability you created. And now I am his queen, Elias. Not because I love him, but because he is the only one who didn't let my humanity stop him from using me. You abandoned me. Declaimed me. There is no home for me in your territory anymore. You saw to that. The silence that followed was agonizing. The Blackwood warriors shifted uncomfortably, and even some of the feral shifters looked stunned. My human words had cut deeper than any snarl. Elias's face went pale under his fury. His eyes flickered with a raw, undeniable regret. That single, agonizing expression was my vindication. I had achieved my goal. The wound was finally healed, replaced by a cold, hard scar of autonomy. Caleb seized the moment. He wrapped his arm around my waist, hauling me against his side. His breath hot on my ear. Do you see, Alpha? She is done with your lies. She belongs to the true wolves now. You lost your mate, and now you will lose your pack. Elias's wolf took over. His muscles swelled, his jaw contorted, and the sound that ripped from his throat was a horrific, blood-curdling howl of pure grief and rage. It wasn't a call. It was a promise of violence. Caleb! Elias roared, his voice thick with the change, the scent of his wolf, cedar and snow, suddenly overwhelming the air. I don't care about your fight. Came for her. I will take back what is mine. Caleb thrust me behind him, pushing me hard toward the lodge door. She is not yours, coward. She is the one you threw away. Kill him, my queen. If he steps 1 foot closer, you will put a bullet in his heart. He didn't wait for my response. Caleb lunged forward, transforming mid-air. The sound was a horrifying bone-crushing crack, and where the man had stood, a massive shaggy black wolf with blazing gold eyes materialized, colliding with a rushing, equally massive russet wolf of Alpha Elias. The fight was instant, brutal, and deafening. Teeth snapped, fur flew, and the ground shook with the impact of 2 apex predators tearing into each other. The sheer, savage force was terrifying. The Blackwood and feral shifters immediately engaged. The clearing erupted into chaos, a savage melee of snarling, ripping, and fighting. Wolf against wolf, civilized against feral, duty against instinct. I scrambled back into the lodge, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. I was supposed to be the prize, the one who ended the fight, but I was just a human standing in a crossfire. I could hear the ripping, the snarls, the screams, the sounds of the true war raging outside. I looked at the corner where the rifles were hidden under the tarp. I had my human weapon. Caleb had told me to use it. But using it meant guaranteeing my own death, as either pack would kill the human who shot their leader. This is it, Maya. I thought of Silas's words. The old deer trail. Run straight up the mountain. Too steep for wolves in a hurry. Caleb needed me to stay, to be his symbol. Elias needed me to stay, to be his reason for the fight. But I needed to survive. Both wolves were equally dangerous now, equally capable of using me, discarding me, or killing me by accident. I saw Jackson, the scarred feral, glance toward me just before he shifted and charged into the fray. He was watching to see if I would run, to see if his distrust of my humanity was justified. I didn't hesitate. I didn't reach for the rifle. I scrambled to the back door, threw it open, and burst out into the dense, icy woods. I ran, not toward Blackwood, and certainly not toward Caleb, but straight up the impossibly steep western ridge, toward the old deer path. I was the queen of scars. I was the liability. I was the prize. And I was going to be the survivor. Both the alpha and the feral had underestimated the one thing they couldn't control, a human woman with nothing left to lose. I was running toward the forgotten cabin, toward an isolation that was terrifying, but the thought of returning to either of their prisons, Elias's comfortable rejection or Caleb's brutal command, spurred me faster up the punishing incline. The sounds of the desperate, savage battle faded behind me, replaced by the ragged, painful gasps of my own desperate breath. The climb was relentless, pure human effort against the savage indifference of the mountain. But I didn't stop. I had seen Elias's face, the raw pain of his regret. It was my only victory. And now I was running for my only reward, freedom. The relentless climb up the western ridge was the most purely physical trial of my life. My lungs burned with the cold, thin air, and my legs, already weary from weeks of fear and limited sustenance, screamed in protest. Every muscle fiber ached with a kind of deep, punishing pain that leaves you weak, yet strangely alive. I didn't have the endurance of a shifter. I had only the desperate, animalistic will of a human determined not to die. I pushed myself using Caleb's cruel lessons. Fear is focus. The fear keeps you alive. I pictured Elias's face, the pure, crushing agony of regret when he saw me standing with his enemy, and that vision was a sharp, bitter fuel. He had called me a liability. Now I was a ghost, a loose end that could doom both alphas. I found the deer trail Silas had described. It was barely visible, a winding, narrow track that threaded through thickets of thorny brush and over slick, moss-covered rocks. It was treacherous, utterly silent, and steep enough to deter a confident wolf in a hurry. It was perfect. Hours later, as the sun finally dragged itself above the horizon, painting the sky in frigid shades of gray and pink, I reached the summit. The air here was pristine and biting. I stopped, hands on my knees, sucking in deep, ragged breaths until the black spots behind my eyes cleared. The cabin was nestled in a small, flat clearing, protected by a ring of ancient, towering pines. It was a crude, single-room structure made of rough-hewn logs, clearly abandoned for decades. The windows were either broken or boarded up, and the chimney was crumbling. It smelled of rot, dust, and deep, quiet solitude. I stumbled toward it, my body nearing collapse. I had no idea who owned this land or why it was left here, but it was shelter. And more importantly, it was quiet. The savage, visceral sounds of the shifters' war, the snarls, the howls, the metallic scent of blood, had completely vanished, replaced by the gentle rush of the wind through the pines. I forced the warped, sticky wooden door open and collapsed inside. The darkness was absolute. I lay on the dirt floor for a long, agonizing time, letting the exhaustion wash over me. Too weak to cry, too scared to truly rest. The first 3 days in the cabin were a blur of survival. My meager resources from the lodge, a tin cup, a small blunt knife I'd managed to hide in my jacket, and the remaining half of my dried meat ration, were all I had. The lack of heat was the biggest threat. I spent hours gathering dry wood, but starting a fire proved nearly impossible with damp sticks and no matches. I remembered seeing Caleb use flint and steel, but I only had the blunt knife. On the 3rd day, desperate and shivering so violently I could barely move, I found a small, rusted piece of metal pipe among the debris. Using the pipe and the flat of the knife, I managed, through sheer, painful persistence, to strike a tiny, life-saving spark into a nest of dry pine needles. The sight of the first flickering flame was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I nurtured it carefully in the old stone hearth, and soon, a weak but comforting warmth radiated into the tiny room. I sat before it, weeping silently, not from fear or sorrow, but from the brutal, exhausting relief of a small, hard-won victory. My humanity, Elias's reason for rejection, was now my greatest asset. I was resourceful, could use tools, could adapt. The shifters, for all their power, relied on raw strength and pack unity. Alone, I was forced to rely only on my wits. With the fire established, I began to explore my surroundings. I found a stream 50 yards away, providing fresh, if icy, water. I also found something else, a small hidden cache buried beneath a flat rock near the stream. It held a coil of fishing wire, a few rusting hooks, and most remarkably, a small sealed tin of waterproof matches. Whoever had owned this cabin had been a survivalist. But the real threat wasn't the cold or the hunger. It was the solitude. It was the deafening silence that replaced the constant menace of the feral pack. Being alone meant I had nothing to focus on but the gaping, throbbing void where the mating bond had been. The pain from Elias's regret had been sharp and temporary. The pain of the broken bond was a constant, dull ache, a profound spiritual loneliness that was impossible to ignore. I was truly free, but freedom had never felt so devastatingly empty. I would talk to myself just to hear a voice. I missed the aggressive, terrifying rhythm of the lodge. I even shamefully missed the intensity of Caleb's stare. At least in their presence, I was focused on survival. Now I was forced to focus on the wreckage of my own soul. Around the end of the first week, I was outside, chipping away at frozen debris near the cabin, when a new scent hit me. It wasn't the feral musk of Caleb's pack, nor the clean scent of cedar that belonged to Elias. This scent was different. It was subtle, floral, and carried a trace of something ancient and wild, like mist on mountain heather. It was the scent of a she-wolf. I froze, dropping my crude shovel. My heart leaped into my throat. The Blackwood pack was not known to roam the high ridges, and the feral pack had no females that I had ever seen. My only possible sanctuary was about to be invaded. I scrambled back inside the cabin, slammed the door shut, and grabbed the only substantial weapon I had, the blunt, heavy knife. I huddled by the fire, my entire body tense. My mind raced. I couldn't fight a shifter. My only chance was to hide, to pray they were just passing through. A moment later I heard the sound of footsteps, soft, almost silent, but deliberate, approaching the cabin. They stopped right outside the door. A gentle rap came at the door, a completely unexpected, civilized sound. "I know you're in there, Maya," a low, melodic voice called out. It was a woman's voice, calm, intelligent, and utterly without malice. "I am not here to hurt you. I am a neutral party. I am here because Elias sent me, not to take you, but to protect you." I held my breath, gripping the knife so tightly my knuckles were white. "Elias rejected me," I called out, my voice rough and shaky. "He has no right to send anyone." "He sent me because he saw your face," the woman replied, her voice filled with a quiet sympathy. "He saw what he did to you. He knows you won't come back. But he cannot live knowing you are alone and undefended against the wolves he created." I hesitated. Elias's fear had been real. His regret had been devastating. But trust in the supernatural world had been brutally beaten out of me. "Who are you?" I demanded. "My name is Chloe," she answered. "I am an elder of a small, separate pack that monitors neutral territories. And I am his sister." My heart stuttered. Elias had a sister. He had never mentioned her. "I am a medic, Maya. I am not here to fight. I tracked your scent up the ridge. You are alone, you are exhausted, and you are running on empty. I am simply offering supplies, and the promise of absolute silence. I will not tell Elias where you are. I will not tell Caleb. But you must let me help you survive the winter. You are too human to make it up here without aid." Her words were simple, honest, and terrifyingly accurate. I was on the brink of collapse. The small flicker of fire I had made wasn't enough to keep the cabin truly warm. I was utterly out of my depth. After another agonizing moment of silence, I slowly lowered the knife. Elias may have rejected me, but he hadn't wanted me dead. He wanted me safe, just not near him. Sending his sister, a neutral medic, was the closest thing to an apology he could manage in the midst of a war. With a final desperate surge of courage, I unlatched the door and pulled it open, revealing the slender brown-haired woman standing outside. Her eyes were not the fierce amber of the Blackwood Alpha. They were a warm, empathetic hazel, and they fixed on me with quiet intensity. She was wearing practical hiking gear and carried a large, well-stocked backpack. "You look terrible, Maya," Chloe said gently, her expression softening into genuine concern. She didn't move to touch me or take me. She simply stood there, a bridge back to a dangerous yet less desperate world. I stepped back, allowing her entry. "I look like a survivor," I corrected, my voice hard. "And you will promise me, Chloe, that if you betray me, I will make sure your brother knows exactly what a monster he is before I die." Chloe nodded, her hazel eyes steady. "I promise, Maya. My only priority is ensuring his mistake does not cost an innocent her life. I am here to help you live." She stepped into the cabin, bringing with her the warm scent of herbal remedies, and in the space where the painful void of my bond had been, a fragile new sensation took root. Alliance. It was an alliance born of Elias's guilt, Chloe's compassion, and my own absolute desperation. I was no longer utterly alone. But my solitude had been traded for a secret partnership with the sister of the man who broke me, and the consequences of that secret were still unknown. The secret alliance with Chloe felt like balancing on the edge of a razor blade. She was compassionate, skilled, and utterly dedicated to her promise of neutrality, yet every time she visited the cabin, bringing supplies, sharing news of the escalating war, and discreetly treating my growing list of scrapes and bruises, I was reminded of the man whose blood ran in her veins. The man who had broken me. I learned that the confrontation I had engineered had achieved precisely what Caleb wanted. It had thrown Elias into a frenzy of rage and self-doubt. The battle had been inconclusive, brutal, and costly to both sides. The Blackwood pack, used to easy victories, were reeling from the savage ruthlessness of the feral shifters. Elias, fueled by the guilt of seeing me, had become reckless, prioritizing the hunt for Caleb over the systematic defense of his territory. "He's unraveling, Maya," Chloe whispered one night, as she cleaned a deep cut on my arm with practiced ease. "The shifters are used to the Alpha being a pillar of control. Now he's a storm. He's obsessed with finding you and Caleb, but he can't reconcile the two. He can't fight a war and deal with the guilt of abandoning his mate at the same time." I looked into the small, flickering fire, feeling a cold, hollow satisfaction. He wanted a powerful Luna. He got a psychological weapon instead. That's the price of his pride. "It's the price of his love, Maya," Chloe countered gently, her hazel eyes fixed on mine. "He didn't just reject a liability. He rejected his heart. That's why the bond scar still bothers you. It's the sound of a heart breaking, not just a chain snapping." Her words were an unexpected, shattering blow. I had built my survival on the bedrock of hate and righteous anger, refusing to acknowledge any tenderness from Elias. But if he was truly suffering, if the regret was genuine, did that change anything? Well, it was too late. He had made his choice. The turning point came 10 days after the initial battle. Chloe arrived at the cabin looking visibly shaken, her face pale. She collapsed onto the rough wooden stool and pulled a crumpled, dirty map from her pack. "It's over, Maya. For now," she said, her voice strained. "The feral pack hit the manor. It was a targeted, brutal attack. They didn't aim for the pack, they went for the symbol of his weakness, the administrative heart. Caleb succeeded in crippling the Alpha's ability to govern. She flattened the map on the floor, pointing to a small, isolated area marked Old Hunting Reserve. The Blackwood warriors are scattered, regrouping. Elias has pulled out. He's taking the loyal core and moving them to the old reserve for protection. But Caleb isn't stopping. He knows Elias is wounded. He's going to hit the reserve. He's going for the kill. What does this have to do with me? I asked, my voice flat, though a cold dread was curling in my stomach. Chloe looked me straight in the eye. Caleb has won the battle of wills. Elias is at his lowest point. Caleb knows the only way to solidify his dominance is to present the captured queen at his final victory. He's coming for you, Maya. He will use your presence to shatter whatever resolve Elias has left. I was silent, staring at the lines on the map. I was a magnet for disaster. He thinks I'm his prize, I murmured. He thinks I'll stand there terrified while he takes my former mate's life. You are the rejected mate. You are the symbol of Elias's failure, Chloe summarized. Caleb's victory is meaningless without you there to witness it and cement his claim. He's coming for you today. I looked at Chloe. And what does Elias get if I warn him? He rejected me. He threw me out of his life. Why would I risk everything to save the man who broke me? Chloe didn't plead. She simply stated the truth, the core of my dilemma. Because Maya, if Elias dies, Caleb wins. And if Caleb wins, his pack of feral, brutal shifters will take over this entire territory. They will kill every weak, human-sympathizing shifter, and then they will turn on the humans. You saw their nature. You know their rules. You are too human for Elias, but you are still too human for Caleb's world to let you live. You survived despite Elias's rejection, but you will not survive Caleb's victory. You have nowhere else to run. The brutal reality of her words crashed down on me. My freedom was temporary. My survival, no matter how hard one, was contingent on the failure of the feral pack. My only path to continued life lay in the continued, albeit wounded existence of the Blackwood pack and Elias. My resentment was a powerful thing, but my will to live was stronger. The reserve, I said, pointing to the spot on the map. Is there any way I can get there without going through the feral territory? Chloe's face lit up with a desperate hope. There is an old maintenance road, but it's treacherous. Can get you close. It's hours away, Maya. You'll be walking into a war zone. I've been in one since Elias rejected me, I said, standing up, my resolution cold and firm. I picked up the blunt knife, the only weapon I had. Let's go, Chloe. We don't have time. The journey was a desperate rush through the unforgiving woods, navigating steep ravines and tangled undergrowth. Chloe, despite her initial apprehension, moved with the quiet grace of a born tracker. She was my silent shield, guiding me through the wilderness. We reached the edge of the old hunting reserve just as dusk fell, painting the sky in blood-orange hues. I could already smell the rising intensity of the shifters, the feral, dirty musk of Caleb's pack mingling with the sharp, clean cedar of the Blackwood warriors. The air vibrated with impending violence. "This is it, Maya," Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "I can't go any further. I have to stay neutral." I nodded, gripping her hand tightly. "You did more than enough, Chloe. Thank you." I left her hiding behind a large fallen log and moved toward the reserve. I wasn't running to Elias. I was running to survive, and survival meant tipping the scales in the only way the human liability, could. I found Elias on a slight rise overlooking a deep, wide ravine. He was standing alone, away from his core guard, his back to me. He was in his human form, but his posture was tense. His shoulders slumped with defeat and exhaustion. He looked less like an alpha and more like a man facing the end of his world. I approached slowly, quietly. "He's coming," I stated, my voice low and immediate. "He's not waiting. He's hitting you tonight. Here." Elias spun around, his amber eyes blazing, shock quickly replaced by a desperate, agonizing hope. He looked at me, the human he had cast out, and his entire frame trembled. "Maya," he breathed, taking a shaky step toward me. "You came back." "I didn't come back," I corrected, my heart aching with the effort of holding my ground. I couldn't afford softness now. "I came to stop Caleb. Not for you, but for the humans who will die when he takes over. You were weak when you rejected me, Elias. Don't be weak now. Don't let your guilt blind you." I walked right up to him, my gaze holding his. "Caleb is counting on you to be desperate and disorganized. He wants to shame you in front of your pack. He wants the broken Luna on display." Elias looked at my face, at the weariness, the dirt, and the fierce, bitter strength in my eyes. The last vestiges of his guilt crumbled, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. He was Alpha again. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice low and firm. "He needs me to be here," I said, looking out at the gathering shadows in the ravine. "And he needs to think I'm still just a human pawn. I'll be the distraction, Elias. The one he rushes to claim. You use the chaos." A low, deep howl echoed across the ravine. Caleb's challenge. The attack was beginning. Elias's amber eyes hardened. He reached out and grabbed my hand, squeezing it, not with the aggressive possessiveness of Caleb, but with a sudden, profound respect. "I will not let this cost you your life, Maya. Never again. Just win, Elias," I whispered, pulling my hand free. "Prove to me that your pack is worth the price I paid." I didn't wait for his answer. I ran, not toward the fighting Blackwood guard, but straight toward the ravine edge, toward the sound of Caleb's howl. I stood exposed on the edge, the setting sun painting my silhouette for all to see. The first wave of feral shifters rushed up the opposite side of the ravine, and leading them all was Caleb. He saw me. His rush faltered. His massive form halted, radiating pure, predatory triumph. "The Queen returns!" Caleb roared, his voice carrying over the din of battle. He grinned, a terrible flash of canines. "I knew you wouldn't run, little morsel. You know who the true king is." He started to cross the open space, the space I was counting on. "You're wrong, Caleb," I shouted back, my voice shaking but loud, carrying the desperate edge of a defiant human. "I didn't come to choose a king. I came to choose the survivor." Just as Caleb leaped toward me, Elias gave his command. A synchronized line of Blackwood warriors, hidden in the flanking trees, shifted and descended into the ravine, trapping Caleb's leading group. Caleb was completely exposed, his focus lost in his desire to claim his prize. "You lose, Caleb," Elias roared, finally shifting, his giant russet wolf lunging down the slope toward the feral Alpha. Caleb looked from the surrounding trap to me, a flash of pure, frustrated realization in his gold eyes. He had been so focused on exploiting Elias's pride, he hadn't seen the human's cunning. He was right. I was too human for Elias's prideful rules, but I was also too human for Caleb's simple, brutal instincts. My rejection had freed me from both of them. The final battle raged. I stood on the ridge, watching the chaos, completely ignored by both packs. I was no longer a prize or a pawn. I was the lone human witness. I was the woman who had survived the judgment of the Alpha and the capture of the feral. I was the queen of my own survival. When the dust settled hours later, the feral pack was broken, Caleb captured. Elias stood before me, once again in his human form, weary, wounded but triumphant. He was whole, but his eyes were filled with the heavy weight of his mistakes. "You saved us, Maya," he said, his voice raw. "You saved me. I was wrong. I was arrogant. I am so sorry." I looked at him, the man I still loved, the man who had broken me. My heart ached, but it didn't race with the desperate need of the past. It was calm. "I didn't save you, Elias," I said, my voice quiet, final. "I saved myself. Chose survival. That choice cost me everything I had with you. You taught me the true price of weakness. Caleb taught me how to fight it. Now I have to learn how to live with both lessons." I turned, leaving him standing in the cold moonlight, the victor of a war I had helped him win. I walked past Chloe, who gave me a nod of silent respect, and continued down the mountain, away from the pack, away from the war, and away from the man who had loved me but feared my humanity. I was a survivor, a weapon, and utterly, perfectly free. My journey wasn't over. It had just truly begun.